Hey, thank you very much, and welcome to the presentation today. And thank you for inviting me to speak at this very exciting event. And yes, thanks for hanging around for the last speaker. Today, I will be speaking a bit about innovation, innovation in the sense that how uh, innovation keeps the company forward looking. I mean, we all know what innovation is all about. But what we perhaps need to cover today is what does it mean to keep our innovation forward looking in terms of transformation of technology, and how we can adapt to the changing scenarios that perhaps we are going through right now. Okay, so let's explore a bit here. So the COVID-19 pandemic, as you all know, have impacted nearly all sectors today. And now, it's perhaps a bit obvious that many sectors have seen their value getting eroded because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this particular McKinsey study indicates that several sectors would experience a significant erosion of their existing business. And this is not unexpected, right? And in some sectors, as you can see in this picture, roughly around 50% of their value or their incomes, their EBITDA, would get eroded in the next 10 years or so. The critical question is that how does an anti-fragile organization react to this? And over the past 3 days, we have seen many new ideas being discussed. We heard about new leadership model, about people centricism, about business model innovation, and even operational transformation. Why intend to cover today is the critical question that how do we need to transform innovation? I mean, of course, we all know innovation keeps us focused on the future. It's supposed to be the doorway towards the future, but does it really need transformation? I suppose so. I suppose so because innovation, like every other thing in our business, isn't static, and it will have to have an impact on the way we work. What we will discuss today is a bit of Altran's innovation model and how this is impacting the way we work, way we serve our clients, and how we deliver some of these commitments out of Altran India. So let's take some examples to begin with. Uh, let's some example. Let's start, for example, with automotive. Now, what we have to look here is that many automotive sector has seen a huge impact due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the companies are digging into technologies and are trying to find models to tackle this change. And in fact, they're looking at other sectors for inspiration. And also they are trying to figure out how they can contribute to social sustenance. And in the case of automotive, the very interesting aspects have come out across the globe today. So with the number of COVID-19 cases rising, and there was a huge demand for ventilators, and the medical equipment industry just could not keep up. And automakers like Mercedes, including their racing division, believe it or not, started producing simpler ventilator models. General Motors was asked to produce ventilators under the Defense Production Act in concert with another ventilator company. And perhaps one of the most exciting example of innovation being driven out of one industry towards another was Tesla, who stepped in with a whole new design, using a lot of new technology and parts that went into making Tesla cars to design a ventilator. And these are some of exciting examples of how technology of one sector was able to help the other sector. Again, these are not inventions. These are innovations because you're basically using an invention used in a different sector to transform the industry or transform the technology of another industry. And there are more such examples. And one of the interesting examples that is there is in aerospace. And aerospace actually gives some very unique examples that we can think of. It is one of the hardest hit sectors, make no mistake. I mean, there's hardly any air travel today. So the aerospace sector seems to have got stuck in um, some kind of a paralysis when it comes to spend, particularly R&D spend. However, the technologies that drive drones, particularly the autonomous connectivity and the autonomous nature of drones, have helped the social sector to fight back the pandemic. And one of the greatest examples is an Indian startup, Maruti Drones, who has helped disinfect 11 districts in Telangana using drones. And drones have been extensively used during this pandemic. It forced many to figure out how logistics and delivery industry can leverage drones. Drones has become a default way of providing contactless deliveries. May not be so much in India, but but across the globe, we have seen drones being extensively used for contactless deliveries. The aerospace technologies have also leveraged technologies from other industries, for example, robotics, which is a very standard technology used in industrial manufacturing. And the aerospace industry have been using this to disinfect aircrafts, particularly UV disinfection, which was something nobody really knew that this was even possible. And suddenly, this became a very important technology to leverage by the aviation sector. Then there are more, and perhaps one of the areas that I have been quite intimately associated with is communications. And in the communication sector, we have seen several startups have come up who are developing digital health devices, which include the ability to monitor vital signs, personalized data, and predictive health models. It also provides patients with a lot of autonomy when it comes to hospitalization. So they can continue to sustain positive lifestyle behaviors and optimize their health, despite the fact that um, a lot of these technologies were not accessible prior to the pandemic. So many startups actually came up and scaled these innovation to an extent that the IoT platform, and IoT is a massively misused term, but the IoT platform, which enables wireless transmission of patients' vital signs, are now being used extensively. The data can be used as an input for AI-powered engines, which analyzes information, identifying perhaps signs of deterioration and enabling some kind of early intervention. And we will see some examples of how Altran has been leveraging this technology to develop uh, transformative innovation for the healthcare sector. I will talk about that maybe in the later part of this presentation. Another aspect which the previous speaker has spoken about was that about telemedicine. In certain cases, and we have a very good live example that we'll talk about later, is that how 5G, which is perhaps touted as the most reliable wireless connectivity of the future, has been able to connect doctors, remote doctors, with patients. And as we know in the pandemic scenarios, the number of doctors vis-a-vis the number of patients that needs medical care was absolutely lopsided. We had much lesser doctors than as compared to the patients. And telemedicine, in a way, has become a reality because it is able to provide some kind, it's able to leverage a reliable connectivity, a usual wireless connectivity provided by any mobile network operator. And we'll talk about that as we move on as part of this presentation. Another and perhaps an example which is really cool, in my opinion, is in the manufacturing segment. And this is an interesting example. There's one of the world's largest online grocery retail companies, Ocado, in the United Kingdom, which approximately ships 2 million items every day to customers across the United Kingdom. Cambridge Consultants, an Altran company, worked with Ocado to transform the warehouse automation. And how did they do that? So basically, they introduced new wireless control systems, which enabled Ocado to control massive amounts uh, of inventory, including thousands of crates containing millions of grocery items in real time and in parallel. This was a massive technology breakthrough. It enabled Ocado to control over 1,000 machines, communicating with them over 10 times a second in a warehouse bigger than an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And this did not use anything extraordinary. It used normal wireless technology connectivity like unlicensed 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi bands, for example, to coordinate massive amounts of fast-moving machines in a fraction of a second. This is an innovation, a typical example of an innovation, how connectivity and using it innovatively could change the way warehouse automation could be implemented for a very large scale retailer. And that actually brings to us that these examples are great. I mean, there is a trend. We can see clearly a trend that technology transformation in certain industries have made a difference during the pandemic. But is that enough? Is that all that we can do really? I mean, COVID-19 has happened. It's here to stay, and it has disrupted significantly the way we work, the way we live, the way we go to work or don't go to work, or way we actually communicate between people. This decade and the past 1 decade has put in increasing pressure on the industry to think differently. Climate change was one. Social sustainability and social responsibility of companies was extremely important, and then came the pandemic. So if you look at the different variables that is determining how innovation would be done in a company, means that every company will have to think differently in terms of how they accept the scenarios, how they accept the current situation, and how they react out of it. And one key example is that the business will have to adopt to new kinds of models. For example, greener economic models. I mean, we cannot possibly take into account anymore massive energy footprints. We have to reduce and reduce energy footprints, carbon footprints. We have to think of energy efficiency. We have to bring in more frugality in terms of what kind of material we consume, how we reuse, and how we upgrade our businesses. And that's not unusual, because that has to transform in a way that the companies are able to radically boost productivity. It's a kind of a problem. We have the social responsibility. Our customers expect to be socially responsible. Our employees expect to be socially responsible. And then we have to radically boost productivity at the same time. We are all working away from home. We are working from different locations. We need to collaborate. We need to work together. And that means that the current innovation or the way of working may not be sufficient. The models that we use or have been using for the past several years may not be good enough. And what do we do there? So we look at three areas, and then we go deep into one. One of the key areas is the new consumer activism. And the consumer activism is a way of life now. Brands which has a clear social impact resonates more with the consumers. I mean, if you look at how the stock market has behaved for companies which has positively impacted the fight against coronavirus, have shown the way forward that brands which are more socially aware will definitely resonate more with their consumers. So that is something each company will have to keep that in mind. The second big aspect is the new economies. I mean, why we call it new economies is because what if you look carefully at what will going to change in the next couple of years, it will change the way we travel. I mean, it wouldn't be the same anymore. We know that. It will also change the way we heal ourselves, where how we treat ourselves, what's the different models of treatment, the different way we move goods from one place to another. Are we going to use the same logistics model which we have been using for years now, or are we going to change? So all these aspects will have to go through a transformation. Also, the way we communicate with each other, that will also change. So if you look carefully, we have to look at productivity and innovation models in terms of how we travel, in terms of how we keep ourselves safe, in terms of how we move goods, and how we communicate with each other. Now, that's again not a simple area to solve, and I'll tell you why. It is because the current way of innovation doesn't really have uh, a connection between research and innovation. Research is done in many cases in isolation, which is great because fundamental research is the backbone of any society. But at the same time, applied research, which can bring in innovation, has significantly fallen back because of the lack of focus on doing research for societal reasons. And that has to change. The model of how research and innovation can come together is extremely critical, because new factors will have to be taken into account. How we actually do, for example, a simple example of how we manage the value chain across the industry, how we look at the product being invented or innovated, and how it goes to the market, and how we connect all of these things together. And that would mean that we'll have to think of new builder models. New builder models is nothing unusual. It is all about planning our solution in such a way, or planning our innovation in such a way that it impacts directly our growth. And when I say growth, I mean, is growing enough for the companies, or is it the process that through which we grow, is that mature enough, or is that something that requires a transformation? And well, our hypothesis is that yes, it will need a transformation. And the first element of the growth is the customer themselves. And the customer's expectation for the product and service experiences will be very, very different going forward. Uh, the companies must continuously level set on the customer's new realities. And we call this as the customer journey. The journey of a customer from a requirement to being a satisfied customer will change because every part of the workflow where we interact with the customers will be different. I mean, we may not be engaging with the customers closely enough in terms of physical closeness. So we will have to revisit the way labs are handled, how facilities are handled, how we actually have our office locations, how we actually go and integrate stuff in customer locations. Those have to change. And that means the way we innovate also have to change. The way we collaborate, the way we use what kind of tools we use, how we actually address the customer needs will have to change significantly in going forward. Same about supply chain. I mean, many companies will have to reevaluate their global supply chains. I mean, whether it's for geopolitical reasons or whether it is for the coronavirus reasons, it has to be handled differently. The people will have to work together virtually and more autonomously. They must monitor employee health. There will be different and continuously evolving parameters. They would require different kinds of testing mechanisms. The digital interactions of physical relationships will replace physical relationships. And for example, remote field support will be the new normal. So the way we do supply chain and operations deserves an innovation on their own. And that's been our focus in many ways in the last couple of months. And that leads to perhaps the most important chunk of any innovative model. What do we do in terms of product development and service innovation? The product development would need that we need to step up the way we restart and optimize projects. We have to virtually validate processes. We have to virtually manage our assets. We have to democratize in many ways, and perhaps one of the way of doing that is going for cloud native automation, doing more simulations in engineering and R&D, mitigate the lack of on-site resources. I mean, that's a fact of life. I mean, those have to be handled. What about digital twins? Can we create digital twins of large-scale infrastructure, which can then be innovated on? Uh, Collaborative research platforms, working more closely with universities, using open source. So these are some of the key elements that has to become part of our innovation process. And we in Altran, and particularly in India as well, we are actively trying to leverage these ideas as part of our innovation model. And finally, if we look at the last part of all of this is great, as long as we are able to provide a sustainable and planet-centric innovation. Sustainable not just as a buzzword, but about when you do an R&D for an aerospace, or an R&D for a healthcare, or for smart cities, or for urban mobility, or for green flights, we have to ensure that our technologies are sustainable. What you invest in today, what you innovate today, has to remain important for maybe the next couple of years or even more. So it's the way we innovate, the technologies we leverage, the ideas we bring in and onto the table have to be handled in such a way that it is sustainable for a couple of years. Now, quickly, maybe in the last part of this presentation, I'll quickly go through some of the new builder models that we have been trying out in Altran. And one of the key ones that we are trying out is what we call a system of systems. Now, the system of systems is a very critical element for us. And what does this actually mean? Uh, in a world today, we are suddenly seeing multiple technologies which had independently been developed. So artificial intelligence never thought of connecting. 5G was built never keeping AI in mind. IoT was built for a completely different reason. Embedded systems have been there for decades. cloud and edge computing was actually supposed to transform IT. But we are suddenly seeing that applications are not just about delivering one solution of one problem, but they are leveraging all of these technologies together. If you take the case of a smart city, it is, and take an example of a roadside unit, which could be a wireless connected box, which would be able to track different traffic movements across a very busy street, say in Bangalore. And if we have to implement that, then what kind of technologies we need? We need 5G or 4G for connectivity. We will need an edge computing or a cloud computing to ensure that these applications are well distributed. We would need embedded systems, perhaps, to ensure that the connectivity between the different roadside units are enabled. Artificial intelligence has to be run on those roadside units, so you need innovation in silicon. So all of these different technologies will have to come together if we have to handle innovation in the new era. And that's a very significant change that we are seeing in today's world. The other part is about augmenting the problem solver. And if I'm solving a problem, I don't know everything that goes into actually solving a problem. And I'm not supposed to. I could be an expert in one area, and there could be other experts. How do we augment each other? How do we ensure that there is a software which is able to assist a problem solver, maybe remotely? Augmented reality, for example, has been a very easy and accessible technology to help people working remotely through trainings, through even assistance, remote assistance. There has been generative design technologies, and Airbus has been able to reduce a component's weight by 45%, where the software can virtually predict material properties, properties like static and fatigue strength of material data. And this was possible because that the problem solution had to be done differently. It was had to be augmented through other technologies. An effective use of such digital augmenters would be very, very important going forward. Collaboration between different classes of experts, collaboration between different locations, collaboration between different technology experts would be absolutely required as part of the new model. And that's something in Altran we are actively implementing. A couple of quick points which are mostly understood today is that the fact that we have to inbuild security and safety as part of any design process. It is not an afterthought anymore. The design model, the innovation model will have to ensure that security and safety, as well as scalability, is part of the design of any kind of industrial model or industrial innovation. And lastly, about the cyber-physical design, particularly with respect to cyber-physical systems that can provide deep process control and automation, whether it's in robotic surgery, brain-machine interfaces, augmented reality, which involves coupling of different physical and logical, biological modalities, is absolutely necessary, is part of this new builder model. Now, if we go into some examples of how we have implemented that particular model in real life. And the first example is a mobile robot. It's a project that we would be we are currently working on, where we can actually have a commercially guided vehicle, which could have thermographic cameras. It could have different disinfection capabilities. It could have optical cameras which could detect many things. It could detect, for example, in a shopping mall or in an airport or in a railway station, so that people are not wearing masks or there is enough social distancing across people. This is a project that we have started building. This it uses different technologies like wireless connectivity, manufacturing, computer vision, and artificial intelligence to actually drive this kind of a commercial auto-guided vehicle for through mobile robotics. The other example is what we call as Are You Well? It's an application that was co-created by many people in Altran, including a team in India, which was designed to be a comprehensive medical assistance system. And this was a mobile app that individuals could evaluate their symptoms, and it was developed using IBM Watson Assistant. This solution could leverage a global dashboard, which can assign high, medium, low-level risks thresholds for different healthcare providers. We also have developed a comprehensive COVID Clear platform, that enables collection of systems and data and can predict deterioration of a patient's condition. This is very, very critical for people who are in home quarantine. When does a home quarantine patient start deteriorating? We do not know, and it's hard to predict. And if there is a way to collect symptoms and data from the patient itself, and we are able to predict a possibility or can do de-risk the need to go to a hospital, would be a life-changing solution for the healthcare segment. And this is one of the elements that we are working on. This includes perhaps a model where we can enable remote clinical trials for certain treatments. So a doctor can try a treatment, and remote clinical trials could be done through this kind of a COVID care platform. The other example is what we call as a connected mask. This is a solution that Altran has been developing. It's a connected mask which uses automotive technologies, believe it or not. So it uses materials that is used in automotive segments. It uses several technologies from autonomous cars, like camera-based camera-based tracking and surveillance, ultrasound speakers, connectivity to face masks, skin-friendly material. So this can actually, when this is completed, this is a connected mask which can handle applications for social distancing, communication, and risk area detection, and perhaps even improve the voice. When you're talking behind a mask, we all face that. Our voice is muffled. So the connected mask can also try to fix the voice quality when a person is talking through over a mask. So that's one of the very interesting projects that we are currently doing in Altran. The last one is a project that we had started some time back. It's about a 5G mobile clinic. It was built to demonstrate the connectivity of an ambulance and facilitate remote healthcare by connecting the ambulances over a 5G network. This was done in Italy, and what it was actually trying to demonstrate is a great example of how through 5G, healthcare and computer vision can come together to solve a specific challenge. In this case, a remote healthcare worker can actually attend to a patient, and a doctor, a specialist, can be connected over a 5G network and can provide immediate support to the remote healthcare worker. This way, we can connect nearly every ambulances across different cities. We can change the way the first responder healthcare system works today, particularly in this pandemic world. And this is an example that we have actively deployed and demonstrated developed by Altran. Right. So that's about what I had to talk about today. The whole point about an innovation model is a transformation of bringing out the right balance of research and innovation. Fundamental research is key for any industry to move on or keep themselves relevant in this modern era. The fact that COVID pandemic hit us means that we have to look at the problems differently today. We have to look at ideas that have been germinated in other industries, and we have to actively find ways to bring it to different other industries. It's a journey eventually, the journey of inventing something, innovating on an existing innovation, on an existing invention, and then applying it to a customer problem is perhaps the key problem to solve today. Viability of any solution depends on how we look at a problem. And the way we look at a problem can be vastly different based on where we are and which industry we are looking at. But that doesn't mean that we cannot take help from each other and collaborate to go through this journey. That's what I had to talk about today. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
The first question is, what is the projection for IT and ITES industries on the EBITDA due to pandemic?
Well, we don't exactly have the numbers, and in fact, I don't have the numbers, frankly. But the fact that the ITES will have a definite impact because of the fact that the growth rate of industries have slowed down. That means the average spending on IT infrastructure have significantly gone down or will go down. Now, in case of Altran, we are an industrial and engineering and R&D services, so we do have a lot of other industries to look at. But the backbone of any industry is an IT infrastructure, so that definitely will have an impact. Having said that, we have seen the communication technologies have in fact grown during the pandemic, particularly with the fact that people are working from home. The communication backbones require a significant change and a significant transformation to handle increased traffic. And in many cases, the communication technologies actually drive a lot of the IT infrastructure needs. So I do not see the IT infrastructure, IT enabled services to go down anytime soon. It may be not growing at the rate we are used to, but it will not definitely not be a spoiler for the business.
Understood, understood. Thanks, Shamik. And one more question, and we'll wind up with this one. What are the most common mistakes company make while choosing a technology?
While choosing a
While
technology,
choosing a technology, yeah.
right? I mean, at times we go on hypes, right? And because there is a certain thing which is very cool and exciting, we try and adopt that, which isn't a bad idea, by the way, because technologies has to be tried early. The perhaps one of the biggest problem with an innovation model is the lack of a business validation of an innovative idea. There are brilliant ideas, believe it or not. There are ideas that can really blow your mind away, but those ideas may not be practical. Practical in the sense, from a business perspective, it may not be able to give the return of investments. So the selection of technology has to be driven on two factors. The first factor is that does it have a business case? The second case is that is it too early? In many cases, and we fail 50% of the time, we invested in a technology which was too early for the market. And it has happened several times. And a mature innovation organization is perhaps able to understand what is needed at that point of time, whether it's the right time to invest in a technology or is it not the right time. And in many cases, we have also realized that we have started investing in a technology when it's past the prime. So the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is to find the right time, and that's the mistake most companies do. The other area that most companies think is that innovation is a sort of a discretionary spend for many companies. They feel it's a good to have thing and it looks nice. A company should have an innovation team, but innovation should be the vanguard for any business. It is supposed to, the innovation teams are supposed to go out and try a new technology way before it becomes mainstream. And if you don't do that, then we will not keep our company relevant in the technology space. So, so investing small, investing in the right technology and doing it early enough to see whether it can fail or whether it will succeed is critical. And at the same time, it needs to be done and it needs to be scaled at the right time, as my previous point. So these are the two most common mistakes companies do while selecting a technology for innovation.
Sure. Thank you, Shamik, for answering the questions and also sharing your insights. It was great having you here. And
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it's a pleasure.